everyone, and welcome to episode 479 of the MTGGoldfish podcast. I'm Seth, probably better known as Saffron Olive, and we have the full crew here this week, kicking things off with the owner of MTGGoldfish, Richard. How are you this fine Monday, Richard?
Good morning, Seth. Recording our last thoughts before the blood sun happens. I don't know if this podcast is gonna go live. The sun's gonna go out. All my non-basics will be destroyed or something in the process.
Thank God, no more daylight.
Do y'all get any of the clips where you're at? Like, I know I just happen to be living right under like the totality thing, but like, do you get to see any of it where you are at, or not really?
I'm in an eclipse all year round. It's called smog.
Yeah, I'm always in eclipse. It's called sitting in my office on my computer. I never see the sun anyway.
30%, Richard.
Don't you
get 30%? I get LA. I get the smog.
Well, Krim, how are you this fine smoggy morning?
Oh, let me tell you something. There's a huge difference between watching basketball and playing basketball. I am ungodly sore. Like, I am so sore. We played a full court game over the weekend.
Oh,
and like, wow, I did not sub out at all, and I am feeling it. And then on top of that, I went to the Ren Fair with Kibler and Olivia. So that was a lot of fun.
That sounds like a fun week. Is that who you played basketball with too, or do you just like go down to the? Oh, okay, separate.
Yeah, separate. Kibler would dunk on me. You know that.
Get postered by Kibler, yeah. Anyway, today we are talking Outlaws of Thunder Junction in Constructed. We are talking the top 10 cards and a couple of other extra cards that we had to throw in there, but we're talking about the best cards from the set for non-commander constructed formats, and this set's wild, so we have a ton of cards to talk through. But before we get to that, a reminder that today's show is brought to you by Card Conduit, and Card Conduit's the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. If you ever get tired of the hassles of buy listing, you can skip them with Card Conduit. With their curated service, you can send in as many cards as you want with a buy list value of $1 or more and pay just a 5% service fee. And if you want to do a bit of work, you can use the sorted service where you list and sort your cards in advance and pay just a 2% fee. Either way, you'll get a detailed report with the results and a fast payment once the order is processed. And you can even get another 10% off by heading over to cardconduit.com/MTGGoldfish. Card Conduit, they're the easiest way to sell your Magic cards. So thank you to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And let's talk Outlaws of Thunder Junction in Constructed. And we have a top 10 list that kind of all meshed together from our own thoughts and putting lists together. But before we get to the top 10 proper, there's two bonus groups of cards that I think are important to talk about. So one is reprints. The other is cards that are technically reprints, but are new to Arena. So they're going to have an impact on Timeless and Historic. So as far as reprints, I think there's four really relevant ones. I know, Krim, you're hyped for some of these cards in Standard. They were on your list. So we got
many.
Rest in Peace, Grand Abolisher, Terror of the Peaks, Torpor Orb. Krim, which of those cards are you highest on as far as a constructed impact?
I think right now with Standard and where it's at, I'm really high on Rest in Peace. Just the pure exile, shutting off all the dying triggers, getting rid of all the lands from the graveyard, because if you've seen, there's lots and lots of those land decks, whichever variant, the 4-color, the teamer version, just having pure graveyard hate is so good right now. And then like as you had mentioned, like right after that, I'm curious to see if Torpor Orb is the truth, because there's so many ETBs right now, right? Like that are just flying across the board, along with like the cards you had mentioned just all seem really good to me. Grand Abolisher is a pain to play against for me, but seems really powerful back in the Standard.
I think all these cards, at least, are going to be sideboard all-stars. Like Rest in Peace, one of the best sideboard cards in Eternal formats, coming back to Standard for the first time in a while. As you said, there's a lot of graveyard decks right now, and Rest in Peace is just the hardest graveyard eight. Torpor Orb shutting down like Atalis and Atraxas and a ton of triggers. Although we do have, Doorkeeper Thrall, so some decks, it'll probably be a balancing act. Do you want the body? Do you want the more resilient artifact? Grand Abolisher for hosing, control, protecting combos. And then Terror of the Peaks was really good last time it was in Standard.
Yeah.
Just like sitting on the battlefield, you play big things, you deal a bunch of damage, you get some like weird combo potential. Like if you can reanimate a bunch of stuff at once, you can just like kill your opponent. So I think all these cards should have an impact on Standard. Richard, do any of these stick out to you? Oh, go ahead, Grim.
I'm just gonna say that I think Rest in Peace might be at a point where I'd probably just main deck it.
Ooh, really? Really? Whew.
That sounds
But then
healthy.
again,
I was about to ask that. Is Rest in Peace a main deckable card? Because, you know, everyone's like Sunfall, Farewell, like we need the graveyard hate. So you might as well just play the best graveyard hate main deck. So that's an interesting question. My question is Terror of the Peak still the truth? Have we been power crept? Is this good enough? I don't know. So it'd be interesting to see how it stacks up. Like, because oftentimes the powerhouses of Standards Pass come back and then they like suck
Lightning
because we
Helix.
power kept them. Lightning Helix, yeah. So I don't know if Terror of the Peak still has it.
I
Still
mean,
have
this was only from 2021, though. Of course, at 2021, it's not like we're talking about some lightning helix
Seth,
from
you know this better
the
than
Stone
anybody.
Ages.
A lot of magic has happened in 2021.
I still can't believe Lightning Helix sucks, guys. I'm gonna blame Boros. I'm just gonna say Boros sucks, and if that was mono black, it'd be the truth.
The funny thing is, Boros is like one of the best decks in Standard, and it doesn't play Lightning Helix.
Yeah, it just,
Oh no!
it's just that Helix kind of sucks.
All right, so those are the big reprints. The other kind of honorable mention list is new to Arena cards. So I've been loving some Timeless. Historic, I don't play as much since Timeless came out, but it's still pretty sweet. And there's actually a pretty big list of cards, especially from the special sheets. They're going to be reprints, but they're new to Arena for the first time, including Force of Vigor, Mana Drain, Mind Break Trap, Archive Trap, Mind Break Trap, Archive Trap, Commandeer, Reanimate, Surgical Extraction. I'm pretty sure every card on this list is of a power level to see Timeless play, right? Like discounting show and tell and that stuff, but like it's of that power level. These are cards that legit see play in Legacy and Modern and are banned in Legacy in some cases. Really good cards.
I mean, you just said it right there, show and tell. Like show and tell is in this format. So like these all sound powerful, but then you remember, oh wait, show and tell exists. So like it's weird. Timeless goes from like being maybe not even strong enough for like, I don't know, like limited, and then also, wow, this is absurdly powerful. So the power scale of Timeless is super sweet, but most importantly, you just mentioned two very major cards. Mind Break Trap with all the fetches being added, and now Surgical Extraction. Is Mill live, baby? This is what I've been waiting for.
Wait, what does Surgical Extraction have to do with Mill? I was gonna say there's one card in this set batting up that doesn't belong, and I was gonna say Surgical Extraction. But what are you doing with Surgical Extraction?
Wait, don't you play Modern? Don't you know like Mill is like it uses extirpates, Surgical Extractions after it hits all the combo, like the cards? Like Glimpse the Unthinkable, then you pick off their key threats, or yeah, like if they, you know, I'm gonna keep a no lander Archive Trap and Surgical Extract for the concession.
I feel like in Timeless in specific, so like, okay, so here's the issue in Timeless is show and tell is the dominant force in the format, and we didn't really get like a Force of Negation or something that just like hard answers it. So as far as these new cards, I think the most realistic answer to show and tell is like Mind Break Trap you, Surgically Extract it, sorry, like good luck like doing your thing, show and tell deck. So I actually think that like Thoughtseize Surgical your show and tell, Mind Break Trap Surgical your show and tell. I'm hyped for Mill. I think Mill might actually have a shot to like beat the show and tell decks, as wild as that sounds.
Yeah, and don't forget there's other combo decks running around as well. There's Yogg, all these other things.
Here's what you do, guys. You just change your bomb. What are we show and telling in? We make a different version. Like we have 2/2. Kind of like, what was that black card you played around, Crim? Because you didn't want your Shouldreds all getting taken away, so you play like a 2/2 split. Yeah, it's like you play 2/2 split to not get extracted, but that's wild. If extraction is the key piece in Timeless, I'd be shocked.
Wait,
am I gonna gloss over Mana Drain here? Like,
I mean, again,
banned in every format in existence. It's gonna,
I still can't believe it's legal.
Timeless.
Like for me, I like how is it? Wait, is Mill not playing these cards in Modern? Because I know they do.
But Mill sucks
Right?
because it's playing surgical extraction.
Oh, Mill's not
Mill
that
does
bad.
not suck. What are you talking
Is it
about?
actually tier 1 in modern now? What's going on?
It's at least
1.5. It's
tier
like
2.
one of the 10 most played decks. So it's like a
Really?
solid tier 2 deck, yeah, at the moment. But
Interesting.
okay, so as far as the card you brought up, Richard, Mana Drain, I'm actually surprised that they're not restricting it or anything. I feel like that's a legitimately like super scary card. Am I missing something? Is this card not just like super busted?
What are you going into with it? Like maybe
anything.
Teferi? Like that's the only thing I've thought about, like playing Hero of Dominaria. But otherwise, I mean, I don't know. I'm also not
counter your 3-drop, get 3 extra mana on my next turn. Like,
Yeah.
is that not good enough? Like, do you need to do anything special with this?
what are you gonna do? Archmage's Charm again? Like, I mean, these are all things that like this whole format is absurdly like pip heavy, right?
But if I'm like,
Outside-
okay, it's your turn 5 or 6, Crew, what are you gonna do? You're like, nothing. I'm like, well, maybe he's got a problem with your deck. Like,
That's just a control deck.
turn 5, Archmage's Charm. That's what's he gonna do. Then yeah, maybe Mana Drain sucks, but maybe because you know you have infinite free mana, you play something else besides Archmage's Charm now.
So your
I
control
fully
deck's gonna
expect
randomly
people-
play an Eldrazi or something like that.
no, but maybe you play Teferi Hero of Dominaria or something now, right? Because
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
you can make it to 5. Or I'm sure Magic players can break Mana Drain. I am sure this will happen.
It's a good card. No one's gonna deny it's a good card. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like we've already got counter spells, right? And yeah, sure. Like this one gives you mana. It's obviously nuts, but
It gives
I don't
you
know.
so much mana.
I feel like
Wait,
this
are
card's
you-
gonna end up
Wait. So
restricted.
let
I
me
think
get
it's
this
too
straight.
good.
I counter your 1-drop, and then what? And then I get
What?
1 colorless mana.
Well, you're looking at the worst. So you counter your Ornithopter or something. Like, yeah,
No,
you can talk about the absolute worst case
whoa.
scenario,
I ain't
but that's
countering
not
Ornithopter.
but
Okay.
yes, that's the floor.
What
I
is in
guess.
timeless? What is
But,
in
like-
timeless?
But here's the thing: like the floor is counterspell, right? Like literally,
Yeah,
counterspell is already a staple of the format. Like it is
Yeah.
counterspell. Plus, you also might make 5 mana and do something ridiculous. So
Sure.
I feel like it's like very scary. What about Commandeer? That's a card that we've seen take off in Modern in the One Ring meta. Is this our answer to show and tells in One Rings? And like all those cards are also in Timeless. Are we
I
pitching
commandeer
2 blue
show and
cards to
tell.
steal?
What?
Yeah, I guess that doesn't work as well as we'd like. But do you think this will see playing Timeless and like it does in Modern in the One Ring meta? Like stealing your opponent's One Rings, you draw a ton of cards with One Rings. So
No,
I
I mean,
Commandeer,
If you're describing a
people-
show and tell format, that doesn't seem like Modern, where everyone just sits around and draws 800 cards with 1 rings. So, and if the key card is show and tell, commandeering it does absolutely nothing because it's symmetrical effect. But it is funny, and we do have ample card draw. So if the meta moves away from show and tell and becomes like weird, grindy 1 ring like Modern, commandeer stocks go up. So I would keep it on the back pocket there. I think it has its time to shine.
one
I
last
think it's
arena
not that
question.
great.
And then we get to our top 10 list. So show and tell, dominating the meta, technically reanimates an even faster way to put something super huge on the battlefield. This was a card 2 years ago. They printed in Jumpstart, and WotC intentionally excluded it from Arena because they were so afraid of how powerful it would be. How big of a deal is this for the Timeless meta or historic meta, Crim? Like, does Reanimate do anything? Do we have another, like, top-tier reanimation cheat things into play deck that can compete with show and tell, you think? Or is it just worse show and tell?
I mean, I think it's definitely making a home somewhere. This
It's
is just
got
1
to.
mana. It's 1 mana. This card is nuts. Like this card, I think is being overshadowed by all the bigger, flashier things like the mana drains and whatnot. I don't see enough people talking about what Reanimate will do in this format.
Is
I
there
mean, it's got Faithless Looting, too. You got
Yeah.
Faithless. You don't have Entomb, not a real
You don't have Entomb.
There's
I don't
like a new
know if
3-mana
you
one.
need.
But there's like
Entomb.
Faithless Looting effects in that style of reanimation.
Yeah. You have lots of ways of still getting stuff into the yard.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
usually it's a
technically,
different style
turn
of
one looting.
cheaty decks, right? Like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Legacy, when show and tell was popular, Reanimate existed, or vice versa. Like they both existed and they both had different characteristics, even though they were kind of like drop big fatty. So I imagine both will exist, but not having a tomb hurts significantly, I think. So yeah, and then
That does
also you can show and
consistency.
tell like non-creatures as well, right? So it depends on what the big crazy thing in the format is, but I imagine both will see a lot of play, especially since it has that nostalgic factor. People just like reanimating stuff.
People do like reanimating stuff, that's for sure. And it's a pretty iconic card. So anyway, those were our kind of honorable mentions, reprints and arena stuff. Let's get into our top 10 list proper. And here we're talking all constructed formats. So this is mostly from modern or from standard back through modern. Richard, why don't you guide us through this top 10? What do we got at number 10 on the list?
Are we starting at number 1 or number 10?
Oh, we got to count down to number 1. We got to count down.
Oh, these are ordered?
Last.
I don't know if I agree with this ordering, but okay, let's go. We'll start with number 10. Oh, this is a funny one. This is one that I put on the list, which is Duelist of the Mind. 2 mana, it's a star 3 human advisor, flying vigilance. Its power is equal to the number of cards you've drawn this turn. Whenever you commit a crime, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. This ability triggers once each turn. And remember, committing a crime is targeting anything your opponent controls. So I put this on the list because we all underestimated Ledger Shredder. And I'm never underestimating a 2 mana blue flyer that has some weird ability. But even though I put it on the list, I don't think it's going to see any play because Bowmasters exists. So you can't just willy-nilly draw cards, right? Like,
so for modern.
Yeah, for modern. Bowmasters exists, but, I can see someone breaking this in some weird way, like we broke Ledger Shredder, but Bowmasters keeps us in check. But I don't know. I'm done with underestimating 2 drops. So you guys tell me why this will break modern in a way I don't understand.
I mean, I'm kind of with you. I think this card's actually pretty good. Like, I think committing a crime is something that's going to be pretty easy for decks to do. Like, maybe
triggers
not
only once.
It does trigger only once, but Ledger Shredder only triggers once, and that still ended up being a pretty broken card. So I don't think
that's a permanent counter.
That's a permanent pump. Yeah, this is a
that's a permanent pump.
That is true, but this has much more immediate upside. The reason I'm hyped for it isn't so much modern, which I think it can see modern play, but I'm hyped for it in Pioneer. I've been playing this Prof. Cedric memory deck that has like started to emerge on the fringes of Pioneer, and it's just all about these like blue card draw effects, and you want flyers because you get a ton of counters on them with Prof. Cedric memory. So I feel like it's going to be really good there at a minimum. What do you think about this one, Krim? Is this a standard card?
No, I think this card is bad. And maybe I'll eat my words for this, but I do think it's kind of bad, right? Like what does this do in standard? I mean, maybe there's a tempo deck, but you got to keep drawing cards. I don't know. I just don't like that again, committing a crime easy to get going. Maybe that's where its strengths are. And there's a lot of like other like random like draw kind of benefit cards, like that 2 mana enchantment where you get to play off the top of your library. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Wait, what enchantment?
The one that pumps equal to the cards you've drawn this turn.
Oh, it's yeah, Prof. Cedric memory. Yeah.
Oh, is that it? Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So like, I think that might help it in standard, but as of right now, without having played any yet, it doesn't look great.
So
okay, wait. If it's standard, I got this. It's called Raffine. That's all you need, right? You just like draw your whole deck there. You got a giant Raffine. You got a giant Duelist of the Mind. I think standard, the bar is a lot lower. It's a minimum 1/3 attacker on your turn, 0/3 on your opponents, and then whenever you commit a crime, you can pump, and then you get the Raffine going. This thing is enormous. So standard, I think it has a whole.
What are you cutting? Are you cutting the bat? No. You're not cutting Dennick. Dennick's too important. Fairy Mastermind, I think, is better. So
this is more aggressive than a Fairy Mastermind, right? So it depends.
Oh no. Fairy Mastermind's flash does actually matter a lot. And
Flying Vigilance is good though. Like Vigilance is nice. I really like the combination of Flying and Vigilance. Maybe it doesn't replace it, but you can find some room for it, right? Like I imagine there's got to be or even like the mono blue tempo decks, like the Hauntian style decks. Those decks draw like
anymore, except for the few faithfuls. You know what I mean? Like
Tover.
Cavern of Souls has ended that card. So that deck.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Look, here's the last argument. It's the world champion card. No way Wizards made a bad one. It's got to be
That
played
was going to be
somewhere,
my
right?
argument. Every single one has been good, right? We got Paulo was really good. Elite
Yeah.
Spellbinder. Fervent Champion was very good for its era. Are those all of them? Is this only the third one of the World Championship cards?
You have
Fairy
Fairy Mastermind.
Fairy Mastermind has been very good. So everyone's been a hit so far. So I have faith that even if this doesn't look as strong, it's gonna play up. It's got to. You don't win
All
Worlds and get a dud.
Next card. Simulacrum Synthesizer. 2 and a blue, 3 mana artifact. When it ETBs, scry 2. When another artifact with mana value 3 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, create a 0/0 colorless construct. Artifact creature token with this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. So a construct.
Constructs.
Oh, whenever
this card.
another artifact with mana value
Another artifact
3 or
mana value
greater.
3 or greater.
Okay, greater.
So in standard, I think this card does two things. So we've seen the blue-white artifact deck, which is its popularity has gone up and down. At some points, it's been really good. Some points not as good. But that deck already is just full of braided necks and these expensive artifacts. It's already using Thousand Moon Smithy to make constructs. So it feels like a really natural inclusion there. If you're playing like an artifact deck like that in standard, the other thing this does that's pretty cute is it kind of combos with Cryptic Coat, which is a 3-mana artifact that you can keep bouncing back to your hand every turn to just repeatedly trigger this, which not going to work in like Modern or something, but in a slower format like Standard, that's going to grind out a lot of value over the long game. And then once you get back to like Modern or Timeless or Historic, then you have Affinity shenanigans where all your Frogmites and Mirror Enforcers and Sojourners and all those cards, Thought Monitors, are going to be triggering this and making big constructs. And you already have a bunch of artifacts in your deck, so those constructs are going to get really, really big. So I think this card has potential in Standard back to Modern. What do you guys think?
I mean, standard wise, how do you think this makes that artifact deck like tier? Because like
it definitely
that
improves
deck, it improves it, sure. I just don't know how much better it makes it. I do like that you are generating a ton of bodies, if you can keep your stuff there, but like it seems kind of slow to get going. Convoke will literally just end your day before you do anything. And then I don't know, all the other decks, like the Golgari X decks are just playing Terra Sunder and just exiling all your main pieces. So I don't know. I mean, like this, I do think that it's sweet. I think it's fun. It looks like it'll be a fun inclusion, but I don't know if it makes it better.
How many constructs do you really need to make for it to be worth it, though? Like, not that many, really, right? Like, a construct's a pretty powerful creature.
It is, but it's more of the fact that this is a turn 3, right? I'm like, it's weird that like turn 3, I feel like that's a key turn to start setting things up. And when like the things that people are setting up with, they do something right then and there. This kind of doesn't. And anytime I get very concerned in Standard, at least, about anything that just you tap out and you do nothing with it.
But and then scry, Crim. You scry too.
That's like drawing a card. That's like
I mean, what is it? One scry equates to half a card. So okay, you paid 3 mana to draw 1 card. That's already a bad rate. So
look, we said the same thing about Up the Beanstalk. Okay, you 2 mana to draw a card that's too slow.
But it isn't that great in Standard.
Okay, like, I broke it for you guys. Okay, so we have the prototype cards from Brothers War. Okay, so that allows you to cast expensive things for cheaper. And there's a card, Skitter Beam Battalion. It's a 9 mana 4/4. When it ETBs, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. So if you prototype it for 5 mana, you're gonna get 3 artifacts, which will trigger your synthesizer for 3 constructs. Someone do the math on that, but like that's like what? That's 6 artifacts minimum, right?
That's like infinite power.
That's like infinite power right there. Surely you gotta be able to do something with this.
But I hadn't even thought about that. That's actually really good. Throw in a cryptic code or 2 and you got yourself a deck.
Yeah. I don't
in Modern.
It doesn't.
I'm pretty sure this is Winmore, but you know, Affinity can just play the synthesizer and then just drop all their stupid Affinity creatures for free, which are, you know, Thought Monitors, mana value 5, Frogmite is real mana value
4,
6 or 7, 4 something, who knows?
Yep.
But it triggers the constructs. Probably not what the deck needed, because that's not why it's losing, but it's funny. But could potentially go in there.
Also notable is the ETB effect. So I don't know how that really applies, but kind of like your standard trick, but you could do blink shenanigans, Nahiri's Resolve, Ephemerates, anything like that could be potentially getting you more constructs. So I think the card, it's at least got potential as a build around. So I would keep an eye on this one at a minimum.
All right. Number 8, we have the Urza Saga package. We have 2 cards. Lavaspur Boots, which is a 1-mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0. It has haste and ward 1. Equip 1. And then Lost Jitte, a 1-mana artifact, legendary artifact equipment. Whenever equipped creature deals combat damage, put a charge counter on Lost Jitte. And then remove a charge counter from Lost Jitte and choose one. Untap the land. Target creature can't block this turn. Put a +1/+1 counter on equipped creature. The equipped one.
This card is...
I think we should ban Urza Saga so prevent people from having these weird ideas about everything being a toolbox card.
I think this card is just Jitte in name. I like Lost Jitte, but it is not actually anywhere near the power level of Jitte. So I don't know. Maybe it has a home in Modern. But like I will say that we are now getting closer and closer to enough equipments to run in Standard. We are getting there, but I don't think this gets us fully across the finish line yet. I will say that Kellen is sweet. There's a lot going on in the Standard. There just needs to be that one solid artifact equipment, and I still don't think these are it. We are close, but these are not it.
I think Lavaspur Boots is the big one out of these two, honestly, which is funny because Jitte is like the most iconic of the cards. But Lavaspur Boots, there isn't another Urza Saga-able card that you can get that gives haste. So similar to how Shadowsphere is in every Urza Saga creature deck because it gives you lifelink and gives you trample, I think this is going to serve a similar role where if you're playing like some sort of Hammer Time deck or other Urza Saga deck with a bunch of creatures, I think this will find itself in the package quite a bit. Jitte, on the other hand, I think this one's going to be much more fringe. I don't think your Hammer Time deck is going to be playing it. It does have uses. I think the untap a land mode is actually very powerful with like Nykthos or Coffers or some of these like big mana cards, these big mana lands. It also works really well in like the Dice Counter Tron deck, which is definitely like a tier 3 deck, but there's ways you can go infinite by untapping Karn's Bastion in that deck and adding counters to it to keep untapping it. So I think there's like fringe uses, but I think Lavaspur Boots is like legit good. I think that card's going to see a lot of play in Urza Saga creature decks.
If I was in the Umezawa family line, I would be suing Wizards for defiling the name of such an iconic. Like, what a pile of garbage to call it Jitte. You can't do this. Why would you ruin? Like, people are like, oh, I Stoneforge for a Jitte. You're like, oh my god, they unbanned it? No, it's Lost Jitte. Don't worry. I just threw the game here because the card is unplayable. Why would you? I don't mind the card. Why'd you call it a Jitte? Why'd you call it a Jitte? Call it anything else.
I mean, they kind of did that with Lotus too, didn't they? With Lotus Ring, which is like such a, I think, a very bad
What the heck is
equipment, but it
Lotus
got the
Ring?
Lotus. Oh, you missed that one? That's also in the big store. Yeah, they use the Lotus name on the equipment because you can.
Card is great in Commander.
I don't even think it's great in Commander. I think that card's just bad everywhere.
You clearly don't play Bitter Blossom in every deck.
Okay, they even gave it like the one ring art. Come on, what is this?
Oh, that is the one ring art. I didn't even notice that. You're right.
Oh
yeah,
boy,
that's the theme of the big
this
store.
is a what do you call it? A bait and switch or whatever. They give you with the name, they get you with the art, and then you read it's actually, wait a minute. This is not the card.
This costs 3 to equip. What am I gonna do with this?
These are the spin-off series of the hit movie or TV show that you love. That always
Straight
poorly.
They're always
VHS
bad.
version. All right. Pest Control.
You missed
2
one.
mana Orzhov sorcery. So a white and a black. Destroy all non-land permanents with mana value 1 or less, and then cycling 2.
You missed one.
Great.
What?
Then we come back around to it. That's fine. Well, we
Oh,
missed
did I
Jace, but we
skip
can do
one?
that next. So that's
Oh,
fine.
I
yeah.
skipped Jace. Don't worry. I bumped Jace up for you, Crimp.
Yeah, Jace is moving up a little bit.
Okay.
So Pest Control, this card's just a great sideboard card, right? Like in essentially every format. In Standard, it gets the Boros deck. In Modern, it cleans up Urza Saga tokens, Crashing Footfall tokens, Ragavans, all the little creatures, and it cycles, which I think is a shout out to Best of One, where you can like, with a straight face, run this in your main deck, and if you hit the wrong matchup where it doesn't do anything, at least you can cycle it away for 2 mana. So I think this card's just like great, right? Is this card not just great?
I think this card is absurdly nuts. Like in the older the format, the farther we go back. But like, wow, does Boros Convoke just get poo-pooed on this?
They deserve it.
Like they absolutely get like this is. I am curious if they start increasing their curve after this even more so. But like for the most part, everything in that deck outside of like the enchantment they have and like the Recruiter and the Knight, those are all going. Everything goes.
It gets all the blood, it gets all the clues, it cleans up all those extra like trinkets you got laying around. Oh, this card just wrecks you. What about
the fact that you could just cycle it? Like that's just so sweet.
I remember playing your deck, Richard. I played your Abzan Mosswood Red Knight deck, and you had Crime Punishment, I think, and that card got me real good because I didn't realize it was like X or less or something. I was like, why would anyone play this card? Does this replace Crime Punishment? Is this a better Crime Punishment?
Mosswood Dread Knight's coming back out because of this card. So here's the key difference, right? So why do you play Crime Punishment main deck? Because it kills amulets, it kills rhinos, and it kills Urza Saga. So the key difference between these two is that for 2 mana with Crime Punishment, you can Urza Saga. The other mode is like basically irrelevant. You never reanimate anything almost ever. One time I reanimated Ragavan, but that was desperation. This is 2 mana. A lot of times Crime Punishment is a dead card, right? So this allows you to cycle it and you can like hit all the random drugs. So if you play like Asmo or something like random like that, like you can actually hit the zeros and the ones. This also pitches to Grief and Solitude. So it's pretty versatile. I think this will see play in Modern somewhere. I guess it competes with like Ratchet Bomb, Crime Punishment, maybe Chalice. You can try to like do stuff with Chalice to get around low mana value permanents. But I like this card. I'm gonna try subbing my Crime Punishments out. Depends how many Urza Sagas are running around. But maybe you just weather the storm, let them get the 2 constructs and the lost Jitte, and then you Pest Control them. Right? Like it's but that doesn't help against Amulet though. Like Amulet, Amulet Titan, sorry. Like you want to land destruction that Urza Saga before they start bouncing it and doing shenanigans. That doesn't help. You can't let them actually get the vigor because you're probably dead. This is sorcery speed. So maybe Crime Punishment's still the way to go, but I'm definitely giving this a shot.
Yeah, I think this is a card also that goes back to probably like Vintage and Legacy as well. Because the further back you go, the more efficient permanents get. You get back to Vintage and you're blowing up a bunch of like Moxen and Soul Rings and so forth. So this card just like seems really, really strong and constructed.
This also kills Monkey on the play, which is like not irrelevant, right?
Esper Sentinels and Skrelves and all that stuff. So yeah, it gets all the 1-drops too. Just really solid.
All right, now the moment Krim has been waiting for. New Tybalt. Jace, reawakened. 2 blue, double blue. So blue. It's a 2 mana walker. Okay, 3 loyalty. You can't cast this spell during your first, second, or third turns of the game. +1, draw a card, then discard a card. +1, you may exile a non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your hand. If you do, it becomes plotted. -6 until end of turn. Whenever you cast a spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. And if you don't remember, plotted is you exile the card face up, and then you can cast it at a later turn for no mana.
At sorcery speed.
At sorcery
speed.
This just seems sweet, right? Like I don't know, like you have a lot already in the older formats that make everybody knows you want to try Leyline of Anticipation, Valky, do all of that just so you get to have a wild turn 4 or something like that. But this is a 2-mana planeswalker that doesn't feel as bad as Tybalt. I'm not going to say it's Wrenn and 6 good because it's nowhere near that, but I am going to say that it just seems very good on the curve as well. I can play this and hold up No More Lies. I don't know. I just like this card all around. It seems powerful for 2 mana.
In a Cascade deck or in like a fair deck?
You know what? I think in any deck that wants to like play low on the curve, so it could play maybe again, a control deck might not have as many applications for it, but I'll try it anyways just because it's fun. But the alt doesn't seem that great in those kind of decks. This definitely feels specifically for some kind of combo or maybe like a tempo deck that just wants the card filtering and wants to function on a low curve. So I think this is a sweet card in those decks.
Yeah, I think it has uses in standard for sure. Like, you're right, it's maybe not the best in control just because you don't have good things to plot because most of your stuff you want to be casting at instant speed, but you can protect it well in control. We've seen like the Reenact the Crime deck really good in standard. I could even see like some of the more creature heavy Esper Dimir decks trying a couple of copies of it. You got plenty of stuff that you can plot there. It's just kind of like a fine value card. I think it's at its best in Pioneer. I've been going back and forth on this card in Modern because everyone's hyped about cheating, Tybalt into play. And I'm just not convinced it's good enough in Modern. I know you can try to go full on meme, like turn 1, ley line of anticipation, all that stuff, which sounds like a fun against odds episode, but I just can't imagine that plan's going to be like realistic as a competitive thing. But you have all the pieces for this in Pioneer. Pioneer's a little bit like slower than Modern. You're not dying to a Primeval Titan on turn 3 or facing down, 10 power rhinos or whatever. I think Pioneer might be the perfect place for this. You have the shenanigans, plus you have a format that's just not quite as punishing as Modern. In a format like Pioneer, turn 4, play your Jace, maybe you ramp into it, get it down turn 3, and the next turn cast a Tybalt. That seems legitimate, and you can even do it a turn faster with Kalanjoids up doing the same thing. So I'm high on this for Pioneer. What about Modern, Richard? Any chance that the Tybalt thing is going to actually be good enough?
So I initially poo-pooed this card, but I think Krim has won me over. I think Cascade decks, like actual Cascade decks, so like Living End, Rhino stuff could play this, or there could be a variation of this because you turn 4 this, you hold up counter magic, you plot your cascades, the thing you're cascading in, you untap full mana to protect whatever you're trying to accomplish. So I could see that happening. I could see it just being fair. Like, the plot is like storing up your mana for the future, right? So if your opponent doesn't have an immediate threat, you just plot some sorcery speed removal and then go on your merry way, right? And then you can, play your actual finisher, and then you can play your plot spell to actually deal with whatever they played. I can see that happening. It pitches the subtlety and force of negation. You can't. If the card actually sucks crap, you can pitch it, but it also fixes your hand. I can see it. I can see it happening. And the problem is, like, Modern is very slow, but it's so hard to control anyone without like literally just one ringing them out of the game. So that is the problem with the strategy, right? Like, you're playing like so slow. It's probably better to just like tap out and beat face and kill everyone on turn 3 than it is to try to control the entire game with arguably a incremental value card. It's not a one ring haymaker. It's like, yeah, my turns get a little better. But I can definitely see people trying this, and I definitely see people 5-0ing with like random piles with Jace. So yeah, the biggest problem is all the best cards in the format are more than mana value 3.
Yeah, that part is a little bit awkward. It is nice that it's cheap, though. So yeah, I think it's definitely has potential. I think this is a card, as far as Planeswalkers go, it's just so weird and different than anything we've seen before that it's going to be hard to evaluate. But this is a card I think a lot of people are going to be brewing around over the next few weeks. So I expect that we'll see some people have success with it.
All right. Next up, we have... Okay, sets with the typos. Satoru, the Infiltrator. I'm like, wait, is this a different card? Dimir, 2 mana, 2/3, legendary creature, human ninja rogue with menace. When Satoru and one or more other non-token creatures enter the battlefield under your control, if none of them were cast or no mana value is spent to cast them, draw a card.
I want to try this with all the Kamigawa ninjas still in standard. This has to be at least somewhat playable now, right? Ninjas are good now, right?
It's got to help, right? It's got to help in standard at least. I hope ninjas are good. I really want ninjas to be good when we went back to Kamigawa, and they never like quite made it all the way. But this certainly helps, just giving you this card advantage engine as you're ninjutsuing. I think though this is like a busted modern card. I've come around to this just being like an absurd modern card. It triggers on so many different things. I think I mentioned this last week. I think it was Aspiring Spike compared it to Up the Beanstalk, and Spike was the person who was saying Up the Beanstalk was like better than One Ring right after it came out, and everyone was like kind of laughing like, all right. So I think that comparison's actually pretty good. Right now, Goryo's Vengeance is one of the most played decks in the format, and this like slots into it so perfectly. Like you cast your grief, you ephemerate, so you cast your grief with Evoke, you draw a card, you ephemerate your grief, it comes back into play, it wasn't cast, you draw a card, then you ephemerate again the next turn, you draw another card. So any of those Evoke shenanigans, blink shenanigans, you reanimate something with Goryo's Vengeance, you draw a card, the card's just, it's ridiculous. What do you think, Richard? Busted?
So we talked about this when it was first spoiled, and Krim was like, "Oh, ninjas or whatever." And they were like, "Wait a minute, it triggers on like literally everything."
Yeah.
And then Seth made the offhand comment that it's Up the Beanstalk, and then we all laughed it off. And then I woke up like on Saturday, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's Up the Beanstalk!" You know, a cold sweat. It is Up the Beanstalk, way better than Up the Beanstalk, except it's legendary. So the power of Up the Beanstalk was stacking them. You can't stack.
It's true.
Satoru.
It replaced itself immediately.
You would draw a card with Up the Beanstalk
Yeah.
in an ETB, that's true.
Yeah, whereas Satoru does not.
Wait, does it not? When it enters the battlefield or one or more enter the so when it ETBs, doesn't it
Wait,
place
does
itself?
Satoru count himself?
Yeah.
Whenever
yeah.
it enters the battlefield. So you
Oh,
do
that's
get to
even
draw
better.
ETB, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But it combos with literally everything in modern. It's just you can't stack them. So if Up the Beanstalk was legendary, would it still have been the menace that it was? Because the meme was like you Solitude and then you Ancestral Recall off of it while you're at it, right? If you're only drawing a single card, is it as broken as we thought it was? But it is Up the Beanstalk. So I think people will see play, and Seth's combo of grief. Like if you didn't like grief before, wait till people keep drawing cards off of grief.
Oh my god. Yeah.
So
that's what Up the Beanstalk did. That's literally what broke Up the Beanstalk. That's why he got banned, drawing cards off all the Evoke elementals.
So
and
the
stuff
only
together.
saving grace is when this breaks modern. We like Modern Horizons 3 will just come clean it up with something else that's broken. So enjoy it while you can.
also-
Power crept out.
I do think it's Up the Beanstalk. I do think it's Up the Beanstalk that's legendary.
It's also a creature, so that's other safety valve, right? It can get fatal pushed or lightning bolted. Up the Beanstalk was very annoying for a lot of decks to kill, so at least it dies to common creature removal. But yeah, the floor's so high with its ETB draw a card trigger, and then the ceiling's incredibly high once you start popping off. So yeah, I think this is one of the most exciting modern cards from the entire set, really.
All right. Next up, Rush of Dread. Black generic, 3 mana, sorcery, spree. So you can choose up to, one or all the modes, up to 1, 2, or 3 modes as you cast this spell. So 1 generic mana, target opponent sacrifices half the creatures they control, rounded up. 2 mana, target opponent discards half their cards in their hand, rounded up. 2 mana, target opponent loses half their life, rounded up.
I mean,
I know you love it,
this card is sweet, right? It combos with Bloodletter Valkazats. Everybody knows that now. Mono Black has more tools, I guess. If you were a Mono Black faithful while it was in Standard and you were slightly hindered by a few bannings, does this put you where you once were? No. But I do think that now you have a combo element to your deck. And I do think that this spell is pretty sweet in 1v1. So I love this in Standard. I think this is going to be... for a specific deck, this will be very good.
The combo's what sells me. I'm not as high in it as you are, Krim. It's just like playing it as a value removal spell.
Well,
But the combo,
I like it as a
really
value
like.
spell in Commander.
Okay,
That's
Commander, yeah.
in
See, I'm not
1v1.
going to play it as a value spell in Commander, but I like the combo line constructed. Also, I think the same thing could be relevant in some Black Devotion decks, in like Explorer or Pioneer in specific. Those decks already wanted Bloodletter because it works well with Gary, and then you can also just play this as like a weird removal spell that also gives you a combo kill. So we'll see if that makes Mono Black Devotion into like a real tier deck, because right now it's kind of like a tier 3, fun deck to play, but a decent tier 3 deck. But yeah, I think the combo is the exciting part about this one for me.
Is it Invoke Despair in Standard? No, right? It doesn't.
Nah.
It costs like $1 million. It doesn't refill your hand. It just does a lot of stuff. But if you're losing, you're probably still losing when you cast this, so it doesn't matter. Okay.
But combo.
The combo. Smuggler's Surprise. A single green mana instant with Spree as well. 2 generic mill 4 cards. You may put up to 2 creatures and or lands from among the milled cards into your hand. 5 mana. You may put up to 2 creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. 1 mana. Creatures you control power 4 or greater gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn.
This card's wild. It's like a Tooth and Nail, but it's way cheaper and more like upgraded for 2024. I feel like this card has potential like all the way back to Modern for sure. In Standard, you can just cheat your Atraxas, Italias into play. I really want to put a Obliterator into play after my opponent attacks me. That just sounds hilarious. Like, it's an instant speed. Like, those cards are not only busted, but it's like it does it at instant speed. And then I've seen really good Modern players talking about, like, I'm going to play this in Amulet Titan to get around subtleties. I'm tired of getting my Prime Time with a Cavern subtletied. This, like, just drops your Prime Time into play for the same amount of mana and gets around, like, the subtleties. So I think it has Modern ramifications, too, in tier decks, and is like a Tooth and Nail style brew around essentially.
It also
We have a
protects your
Tooth and
Titan.
Nail now, don't we? In Standard?
Do we?
Do we?
Yeah, we do. It's the
Oh, is it like Thunderous Bargain, like the 8 mana sack something bargain to go through the deck?
but
Yeah, sort of, yeah. It's
Like-
kind of 8 mana and pretty bad.
so do you think this is just I mean, like,
I think
it
being
This is
instant
instant
really
speed.
changes the equation. Like, the big problem with the standard one that's like 8 mana, or even Tooth and Nail proper, is it's very easy to deal with a negate or a make disappear. Like, you're spending so much mana at sorcery speed that it's pretty easy to interact with. I feel like being able to do it at instant speed is going to make it much more realistic to wait until someone memory deluges or like whatever, and then be able, or flashes in their Wandering Emperor and like taps down, and then you can do this and actually like fight through the interaction. So I think the instant speed aspect of it really changes, like ups the power level a lot.
I think this card is absurdly broken and is like one of the dumbest cards they've made. This is like, to me, Uro. So if you remember Uro, so the problem with Uro is this, right? It's a big beater that ends the game, but it's also ramp and it stabilizes you. Like, so what this card does is for 6 mana, you drop your win con onto the battlefield and you win the game. But let's say you're struggling with mana. Like, you can't make it to 6 mana. Well, good luck. We have the 3 mana spree mode that lets you get more lands to ensure you make it a 6 mana. Let's say you dropped your fatty on the battlefield and you're flooded with Smuggler's Surprise. You know, the downside of being ramp. Don't worry, it's a protection spell. It protects you against that, right? So it's like a win the whole game in a single card, and you can choose which mode you need at the exact time. And I hate cards like that because there's no drawback, right? The drawback of ramp decks is supposed to be you remove their one threat and they're dead because they're just drawing ramp the rest of the game, right? Or they get mana screwed and they can't ramp their way into the thing they want to ramp into. This fixes all of that. So this is like Uro 2.0 for me, right? Where it has all the modes it needs to succeed in the same card. It'll never be bad. So the only way to get around this is to like literally surgically extract out the creatures or something so that the deck is no longer functioning. So I hate cards like this.
We're gonna win Richard over to surgical extraction with Smuggler's Surprise of all things.
That's
So
the
you admit the
desperation. I
card's
can't
good.
beat your Atraxa deck. I just gotta render your deck unusable. Like, that's all I can do.
I mean,
I
it
do.
is
I
a good-
like in
Go ahead,
Standard. What is this getting though? So we currently have Atraxa and just Titan. Is that the game plan?
a tally could be part of that if
tally,
you wanted
okay,
to, but
okay.
yeah, so those 3 probably. I think that's worth it. Like those cards have
Yeah.
been very good in standard. I think cheating, like 2 of them cheat into play for 6 mana is like kind of wild. Plus it can protect them. Plus it fills a graveyard too. I think we kind of overlooked. It's also just like a 3 mana green divination essentially that also fills your graveyard for your cruelty to Grix or whatever. Like the card's like actually kind of wild.
Seder Wayfinder.
It's Seder. It is Seder Wayfinder.
And then some.
More Seder Wayfinders into play. We broke it.
Can you transmute for this? Is there any like playable 1 mana transmute?
Because so I know there's Micromancer. I don't know what the 1 mana. What is the 1 mana transmute card? It must not be that playable. I'm looking it up as we speak.
I was thinking this
Dizzy spell. Through 1 blue mana, target creature gets -3, -0, and end of turn, transmute for 3. Maybe not enough.
Playable. Because I was like, oh, if this was 0 mana, this would be hot stuff because you can transmute for it as well with like Talaria West. But yeah, this is crazy.
It's a wild card.
All right. Slickshot Show-Off.
Whew.
That's a mouthful to say. 1 and a red.
Twister.
It's a 1/2. It's a bird in red. There's not many of those, by the way. Bird Wizard, Flying Haste. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. Plot 2.
Does not say triggers only once a turn. On top of that, this
Why does it have
is
plot?
just sweet. What? No, this is nuts, right? Like, I mean, okay. I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, what about mono red? Yada, 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 right? Like in mono red, it'll be good. But I also think there is a chance that whatever kind of spell slinger deck, you save this for the turn that you're about to pop off because you're going to get that free creature, right? The decks that can really utilize that non-creature casting spot, plop it, like drop it onto the board, fire off a ton of spells, and then just go in for the kill.
Oh, yeah, that's where the plot matters to me. I've played a lot of Kiln Fiend decks. The problem with Kiln Fiend is you like gotta run out the Kiln Fiend and it needs to live for a turn, and then if it does, you like cast a bunch of spells, double strike, win the game. But it always dies. This kind of gets around that, right? You can just plot this and wait until your opponent's tapped down, or wait until you have protection in hand because you're gonna have all your mana available. Play it with haste, then you do your like pop off with your double strike and cast a bunch of spells and just one shot someone. So I think this card, and it's just like a good prowess wizards card. Like we've seen wizards be one of the best decks in historic over the course of time. Every time they do a historic tournament, it's like blue white wizards ends up winning it. There's stuff like wizards lightning available, so it's got a relevant creature type. It works with all the prowess style decks. It's like a flying Kiln Fiend, which is also kind of ridiculous. So yeah, any sort of like prowess style, wizard style spell slinger deck, I think this card is kind of absurd. And I think you can just play in a mono red in standard. Like I think it's also just like a fine 2-drop in mono red.
Yeah.
This is cracked. Why do they make this?
Yeah, this card's actually
I can also see it just buying you like a million turns. Like you just like plot it, your opponent sees it. You have no intention of going for any kill. Your hand is like all lands, and then your opponent just like does nothing and holds up
leaves
the entire
mana
hand the rest of the game to make sure they don't die. You're like, okay, cool.
I mean, yeah, like there is the world there where like that happens, but oh my god, it just bought you so much time, right? That's so sweet. And then on top of that, like you can also just beat them down with other things, make them actually have to answer that while they also have to account for this, plus creature lands. So like there's a lot of things that'll make it so that if they're relying purely on sorcery speed removal and sweepers, it will not help.
You can also put them on a clock. So like as your opponent plays this game, like every turn you plot another bird. So you have 4 birds plotting. And then you're like, well, I used all my mana every turn. Did you use all your mana? And then now you go for the bird kill. You send all 4 in. They're not targeting. So you just cast all 4 and you just fire off your instant
like
sorceries and your opponent's
outrages and all of those.
Yeah.
I was kind of skeptical of plot, but this card has sold me on it. I seem so strong on this card. The upside, even discounting the mind games, it's so high on this card. Wow.
I was down on plot initially, but I kind of like the flexing aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like initially, I'm like, wow, you've just given your game plan away. Your opponent will know what's coming. They're gonna get all their hate ready or whatever.
That's
But
the
then you're
upside.
like, what's up, bro? Slickshot Show-Off 1.
It's coming.
Slickshot Show-Off
Bring-
2. Oh, you want to
bring
play
it.
the slow game? 3, 4, and then they're like void
Come
here or
on.
something. You're like, oh god, no.
I want that so. I wish they did that with a counter spell. You can flex a counter spell, and it's like if this counter spell is plotted, you can cast it at instant speed.
I mean, technically, you could plot a counter spell if you wanted to off the Jace
could,
or
with
something, just for the
Jace.
flex crim, just to show them. Like, I have so many counters in my hand. I'm just gonna throw this one away, and you're gonna look at it all game.
Ooh, that's a hard flex. All right. Last card on the list. Harvester of Misery. So it's a 5 mana black card. It's a 5/4 creature spirit with menace. When it ETBs, other creatures get -2/-2 until end of turn. You can pay 2 mana, discard it. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. I do not understand why this is the number 1 card, guys. You gotta break it to me. What's going on in standard? Why is -2/-2 the truth here?
Oh, so go ahead,
I mean,
Crib.
I don't know if -2 is. Actually, no. With all the Groll threats and all that stuff running around, all these like 2 toughness and less creatures are prominent, right? This is just a nice way to discard a card, get into the graveyard. You get to like remove something, or in the late game, it can kind of be a 5/4 attached to like kind of an infest effect. So it's just a good grind 'em out card.
Yes.
I think that's simply as that. I guess you could reanimate it too, or whatever. But like, it's just a good grind 'em out card.
It's like a trumpeting Carnosaur almost, where you have this like on curve threat for the late game that's also your removal in the early game. You get a bad disfigure, then you also get this reasonable body, really good against Boros. But really, I think it's a good card outside of standard. Like we were just talking about reanimate coming to arena. This is one of those cards you can like pitch to kill something on turn 2 and then just reanimate on turn 3. And yeah, it's only a 5/4, but we see people doing that with what Trolls of Khazad-dûm or whatever, like the Swamp Cycler from Lord of the Rings, where people always are like cycling that and then persisting it into playing modern. I'm like, I don't think it's gonna beat me, but like that's kind of cute, you know, you're trying. And then in modern, Living End, I think, is the most obvious home for this. Like Living End, I don't know if you'd main deck it in Living End because it might be too slow compared to the other options, but this is a card that snipes like Voidwalker and deals with some of the creatures that would interact with your graveyard and shut down your Living End play that you can play in the sideboard, and then it's a good body. And then it also wipes out any small things of your opponents that happen to be in the graveyard once you Living End with its ETB.
Do you kill your own creatures in Living End? I'm not sure. Maybe.
I don't think Living End actually, you might lose like a Shardless Agent.
Shardless
I
Agent?
guess,
That's it.
depending.
Everything else
You
is
might lose a
great.
Shardless Agent,
Yeah.
but everything else should survive it. Yeah.
I can see the Living End argument, like as a way to get rid of hate bears, like any kind of hate bear that's messing with you, like even a Thalia or something like that is annoying. So you can get rid of it. I don't get standard though. I remember playing Cut Down and it being like too situational, and that's like where the power and toughness have to add up to 5 or less. Like is -2/-2 real? If you're getting zerged down by red, are you really playing Harvester of Misery? Right? Like
This is
because,
nice.
I don't know about this.
Wait. This is it's so aggressive, right? Okay, if you play best of 1, you do need like all the bodies that you can get, right? You want threats, but you also want answers. This does both in one. It's like Stomp.
Ooh. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is kind of like
but
Stomp,
Stomp
I
is
guess,
so
in
much
that,
better than
in that
this.
sense. It is much better, but
Like,
Well,
would
yeah,
we
it's like
play
what-
Disfigure if it was legal? Is it legal? I'm not even
Well,
sure.
But it's not Disfigure.
But it's also a
Disfigure
massacre
on a
word.
body that could be an infest.
But you need to
right?
make
Yeah.
it to 5 mana to do that, right? So if you're
This
so are you relying
first
more on the
copy-
5 drop or the 2 mana
I think that's
discard?
the beauty. You get to do whichever one, right? If at its worst, you get to just ditch it right then and there and get to do the -2/-2. But otherwise, it's a 5/4 body that comes down that will also pick off everything else. And with all these aggro decks going super duper wide real easily, I don't know. I personally love this card. I think it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean,
And-
worst case, it's really good against Boros, right? And like mono red, like those are the decks where this kills something on turn 2, or if you can stabilize, it can
Grand
wrap
Abolisher.
essentially on turn 5. Grand
Does this,
does get rid
Those
of
Grand Abolisher.
yo, your boy is already prepping, all right, for Grand Abolisher.
Yeah, but there's
right?
so many X3s in the format.
I don't care. I can't beat Grand Abolisher. That's an X2, all right? So,
I mean, Massacre Worm's a really
this is
strong.
Void Friend. This is Void Friend, all right? They can't, this is how we get them, all right? We get rid of the annoying Grand Abolisher.
Massacre Worm's a really strong card. The problem with Massacre Worm is you don't always live long enough to get on the battlefield. So I think like a Massacre Worm effect that you can also use in the early game to like stay alive is really big.
Is
I think
Massacre
it's
Worm
minute.
still good if it was released in
on.
standard right now?
Does
No,
this get rid of
not if
Grand
you can pitch
Abolisher?
it.
It's not an activated ability, right? Or is this an activated ability of a creature?
Oh wait, what is
This is an
Grand
activated ability.
Abolisher? It is
Of a
it's
so Grand
an
Abolisher shut
activated
that off?
ability of a card. I don't know. I don't think it does it? Your opponent
You
can't
can
cast
stifle
spells
this.
or activate abilities of artifact creatures or enchantments. Is a creature in your hand? Does it? Maybe it.
Discard
It is.
Harvester of Misery.
I
Target
think
creature gets
so. Oh, we're gonna need a clarification on this.
Yeah, we might need a judge.
Is that
on this. I'm
is
actually
this
not
only for
100%
Grand
sure.
Abolisher, Krim? How does that change everything?
It matters. It matters.
Well, we'll have to call a judge and clarify next week's podcast. Anyway, I think those are our top 10 Outlaws of Thunder Junction cards for Constructed, so Standard, Modern, Pioneer. Let us know what you think. What cards do you most hype for? Do we miss anything? There's another like 10 or 15 cards that we had on our list that we didn't even get to because the set's so ridiculous. So there's a lot of good stuff in this set. So let us know what you're most hyped for in the comments. No fish mail this week because we're running a little long, but Richard, one of these weeks we'll get to it. How do people send those in for next week?
All right, hit us up on Twitter at MTGGoldfish with the hashtag MTGFishmail, and we'll get to your questions on air.
And I believe that brings us to the end of episode 479 of the MTG Goldfish podcast. So, Richard Grimm, thanks for hanging out. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks to Card Conduit for supporting the show. And we will be back next week to talk about whatever goes on in the world of Magic. So, until then, have a spectacular week, everyone. And this is the crew signing out.